In June 2020, the infamous race-baiting academic, Professor Priyamvada Gopal, who teaches post-colonial literature at Oxford, tweeted out, "White lives don't matter." Now, that outrageous statement is clearly beyond the pale for any academic, but today it seems as if it does accurately represent the views and the feelings of a large swathe of our elite class, both here and in America and across the West. And we've had stark evidence of that just this week with the release of a terrible video showing in America a young Ukrainian woman, 23 years of age, a refugee who fled to America from war-torn Ukraine for safety, only to be brutally and savagely murdered on a subway train in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a black man who was engaged in the most savage behavior. She was failed by the state, and indeed she was a victim of anti-white racism. This video was suppressed by the mainstream media. Later, when it was released, they also suppressed the fact that this man said, "I got a white girl," after having committed the crime. It's an appalling story. I'll just show you the I'll just show you the parts of the video that I'm allowed to show you. Now, you can just imagine what would happen in America today if the races had been reversed. Had it been a white man attacking a black woman, or indeed any white person attacking a black person, the media would be in a frenzy. You would have mobs in the streets, rallies, thousands of people. The police would have been called out to control civil disobedience and violence. Instead, when of course the races are reversed, there is complete radio silence from the media class. In fact, it's quite telling how silent the media have been. Just listen to this recent video put out by Fox News.
Now, why would that be? Why would one story demand 100 articles and another story 0 articles? Take a look at the black-on-white crimes. 385,000 in 2023. The white-on-black crimes, just under 118,000. I'm going to show you literally what the media does with a camera. They zoom in on this number.
So he cites Daniel Penny there because some of you may remember that that was another murder that was committed, or someone was killed on a train similarly. In this case, it was a white Marine who stepped in bravely to apprehend and prevent a black man who was high on drugs, had a long criminal record as long as your arm, was threatening people on a train. He was subdued by this well-meaning bystander, and in the process of putting the man in a chokehold, he died. Now, this was a man acting to try to save people in the train, and he was vilified, and the media was in a frenzy. And as you've just seen in that video, the New York Times had 100 articles about Daniel Penny, none of them positive about what he did. And yet there's been complete radio silence when it comes to this further example of white-black violence. And, you know, one has to ask the question, why is it that the media is so silent? Here we have another example of the New York Times' clear agenda. They had almost 6,000 articles on George Floyd and on various other situations where there was a black victim, and yet 0 when the roles are reversed. This is evil. Especially, of course, because we know, as you just saw in that video, that the majority of interracial violence is black on white rather than white on black. So why is the media silent? Well, because it contradicts the established narrative. The narrative that the media class and left-leaning politicians and museums and everyone else want you to believe is that the history of Britain, America, and the West is one of oppression of ethnic minorities, and that even today, ethnic minorities are struggling against the oppressive and violent nature of these white supremacist nations. And even those who know that that's not really the case are too scared to speak up about this. Why? Because they're scared of being ostracized by their peers, being exiled and sent into oblivion because they dared to speak the truth and say that the emperor, in fact, has no clothes. It's also a case that this man was let out of prison, was arrested 14 times and was still allowed to roam the streets despite the knowledge of what a danger he was to society. This again is because time and again we see people like this being released because they even though they are criminals, they are seen by the left as being victims of a racist society, victims of a society that don't care about the homeless, that don't care about people who are mentally disabled. That's why this chap was allowed on the streets. And there's a very interesting tweet that someone put out, which you can see right here. Let me get this straight. If a bartender can go to prison for serving drinks to a drunk person if they drive and murder someone, why aren't judges accountable after letting a 14-time repeat offender murder a young woman? And you have to ask yourself, what sort of a society is it where a man can commit a brutal murder on an innocent person who they've never met before, never seen before, and then this criminal has a GoFundMe set up to support him? Yes, I'm not making this up. The left are now trying to portray the murderer as a victim because he's homeless and mentally disturbed, and as a result of that, a GoFundMe fundraiser has been set up on the internet for people to donate to this man. That's the level of depravity that has now infected the progressive left in Britain, America, and the West. This calls into question, of course, our own legal system here in the UK, where we've had many examples similarly of these sorts of things happening. But to bring this into a more British context, we also need to have real questions in this country about the degree to which we have such high levels of mental illness within certain ethnic and immigrant communities. It's almost the last taboo that we're not allowed to discuss in this country. For example, if you just look at the official charities dealing with mental illness, you can see here that compared to white British people, black men are 3 times more likely to experience psychosis. Black people are over 5 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, and refugees and asylum seekers are more likely to experience mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder than the general population. Now, that's something we all know. We've all seen, of course, the antisocial behaviour on the streets. I went recently to South London, to Croydon, to see what life was like there. And within 10 minutes of having left the station and walked around the centre of Croydon, the level of antisocial behaviour and mental illness was truly shocking. And so you do have to ask why it is that we continue to import into this country vast numbers of people who are coming from precisely those parts of the world that have the highest levels of violence and crime and also mental health illness. We know, for example, as you can see here, if you look at this chart from Migration Watch, convictions for terrorism-related offences spiked after 2014. Well, what happened after 2014? That was when, of course, Europe opened its doors to third world immigration. And we had a huge spike, therefore, of terrorism offences. And if you look at the list of nations, which are top of the list here, we have Algeria, Iraq, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, Somalia, India, Sri Lanka. These are the countries that have the highest levels of crime and violence in this country, and of course those are the countries from which we are drawing the largest numbers of asylum seekers and refugees. It's still the last taboo, I would say, in this country. It's the last issue we can't discuss. We've now discussed very openly the Pakistani Muslim gangs in Rotherham and Rochdale and elsewhere. We now openly discuss the issue of the birth defects linked to cousin marriage. For example, British Pakistanis account for 3% of births, but 33% of genetic defects, which of course has a huge burden on our NHS as well. But we need to ask, why is it that we are importing a huge number of people who are contributing to the antisocial behaviour nature of this country? And it also applies, of course, to the children of asylum seekers. This is another issue which we don't hear. Since 2010, the 15 of the most infamous terrorist activities have been at the hands of asylum seekers or the children of asylum seekers. And not enough is spoken about the fact that the children of asylum seekers carry along many of the mental issues of their parents and indeed of their homeland. Axel Rudikabana, of course, the Southport murderer, the media tried to portray him as a Welsh choir boy. The fact is, he was the child of asylum seekers. And there is no reason why you cannot discount that connection. Same thing goes for the Manchester Arena bomber too. And indeed, more broadly, you have the issue of mental health. So one of the two murderers of Lee Rigby, the brutal murder of Lee Rigby, the Fusilier who was beheaded in East London, is now, of course, in Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital as well. I remember when Donald Trump Jr. was asked about mass immigration and was linking it to high rates of crime, he said, if I offer you a bowl of M&Ms or Smarties, and I told you several of them were poisonous, would you take a handful of them? Those are the sorts of questions we need to be asking. We need to have essentially a rule in this country now that no one can be admitted to this land if they come from the trouble hotspots of the world. We've had enough. We need to push back against this, and we must call out the hypocrisy of the media when it comes to the two-tier reporting of race crime in Britain and America and the West today. Until next time, I'm Rafe Hadel-Manku. Thank you.
Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture, and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programs, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization, and our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.